Hello Internet, welcome to another NPC faction guide. In this episode we're going to continue talking about the Isherwood family, so if you do not want spoilers or something like that, this is your one and only opportunity to step away. In the last episode we discussed the location that they will spawn in overall as a very general observation, and in this one we're going to dive into the quest chain attached to Jack Isherwood, and he has a few simple things we can do with him. So first you need to find Jack. Jack is located in a tool shack next to this initial farmhouse that you will find when you come to the area. And he's located in, I gotta assume it's a workshop of some sort. There are tools here, including a miter, a drill press, things like that. He has some mounds of dirt in the corner, and then we also have these lockers that contain some pretty valuable tools and valuable items. Mine specifically have both a wrench and a recharging station, both of which are pretty valuable. However, taking these items is stealing. Now, as we discussed previously, some items are considered stealing, some are not, so you really need to pay attention to that little exclamation point that appears next to the item when you go to pick it up. This indicates that it's an owned item and taking it would be stealing. He also has a small area in the lower left corner of this building where we can see that he has a lot of jars. Now what's interesting about these jars is that they are listed as sealed, but they have no contents and there's no way to open them. So I'm not really sure why this happened. I think what happened is that instead of spawning the food that isn't supposed to be inside of it, it just spawned empty but still sealed containers. So I'm not really sure what the deal with that is. I think it's a bug with the new container system. But really, regardless, these items have no value for us. There is, in fact, a quest we're going to be discussing that requires 3-liter glass jars, and these will not work for that. So it's not worth trying to steal them because you're not going to get any value out of them. We will also notice that there is a locked wooden door next to Jack here, and this leads to his basement. Now, what's interesting is that he does not care what you do with this door. You can smash the door, you can pick the door, you can pry the door open, and none of those things have a negative consequence for your character. Once you do this, and I would recommend you do this, there's quite a lot down here. This is like their pantry. Once we get down here, we can see a lot of various jars containing foods, some more of those empty but sealed jars, as well as some very large kegs full of alcohol. Now, you can't specifically find this location just to get the loot. It's so rare and difficult to find. But if you find this location, there's really no reason for you not to loot this stuff, or at least take advantage of it for eating and drinking purposes. As far as I can tell, and I'm not very well versed with NPCs, so I could be wrong, if you steal items that are out of sight of the character, they don't actually care. So for instance, if I take these things, I can still go upstairs, talk to Jack, do his quests, and he's not hostile. However, if I steal in front of him, I think the first time they tell you to drop it, and then the second time they will actively become hostile. So I think, as far as I can tell, you can just freely take all of this stuff because there's no NPC here guarding it. So it's a good place to stop in if you're looking for supplies. It's worth noting again that these sealed jars are pointless, and currently sauerkraut is also bugged, so if you open a can of sauerkraut or a jar of sauerkraut, it does not give you any food. So yeah, not super great, but there is a lot of alcohol here which can be pretty valuable. Anyway, now that we've located Jack Isherwood and we've raided his pantry, we might as well go talk to the man and get a little bit of dialogue about his family. Now Jack, based on his outfit and the place that he lives in, I'm going to assume he's a nice southern man, and we're going to give him a little bit of an accent here. So when we interact with Jack, he'll say, "Hello traveler, what brings you out here?" And we'll say, "This is a lot of land. You been here since the collapse?" And he'll say, "Oh, I live here with my wife. This is our family's land. My daughter's family and son live down the road." "Your whole family survived?" "We've had our losses. Now we stay close to home, preparing for trouble. We've always taken disaster preparedness seriously, but we didn't expect anything like this, though." "Okay, Jack, let's talk about something else." And you'll see we have quite a few more dialogue options opened up to us, and we're going to get to know Jack a little bit and his family and about what's going on in the area. So we'll say, "A farm must be a pretty safe place to live these days." He says, "Oh, even out here we've had some attacks and seen other things. We have been working on our defenses, but it takes time. We've been able to keep up with the crops and animals, though, so we don't have to risk our own necks for supplies." "Oh, well, what sort of defenses do you want, Jack?" "Well, we want to put up some more fencing and build some lookout spots, maybe lay some traps for the monsters. We could use some extra resources. If you want to bring me logs, sand, clay, wire, nails, wood planks, and metal chunks, I'll give you signed chits that you can use to buy goods from any of the family. We'll say that sounds reasonable. I'll see what I can do. And this does not actually open a mission in our log, but it's an ongoing thing where we can bring those construction materials to Jack. For the sake of example, I spawned a few hundred nails, and if we go back to Jack, we actually have the option to say, I'm here to deliver resources. And when we get into that menu, it will show a list of things that we can currently turn in. So when I turned in nails, I had 500 nails, and he was willing to give me $2.50 per batch of nails. And that comes to a total of $12.50, which equals 5 chits. So he gave me 5 chits. Taking a look at this in the inventory, you'll see that a chit is really just a piece of paper, and it says this is a slip of paper signed by the issuer, and it's worth $2.50 at my current barter skill, which is skill 0. So he did pay me the full $12.50. What's really interesting about these chits is that they can be traded to any faction, not just members of the family. So if you go to Hub 01, Hub 01 will give you the same value for it that you would get anywhere else. And this is really interesting because it implies that the Isherwood family, are well known and that they know that this IOU is good. The hub is saying, even though I know that this is just a piece of paper, I know the Isherwood family, I trust that they're going to pay this debt, and I'm going to give you the full value. So that's really interesting. I'm sure that that's not intentional. I believe this is just because you can't make faction-specific currency. It has to be something that has a value for all factions. But it's pretty interesting from like a roleplay fantasy style perspective. So it's pretty cool to imagine that these people have a lot of reach. So we'll go back and we'll talk to Jack again, and we're going to ask him about his wife. Oh, Claire and I have been together for 40 years now. Couldn't run this place without her. She's quite the herbalist, too. Been real useful lately. She's probably in the house. You should stop in. And we'll check in on Claire eventually, but this is Jack's episode, so let's go back to his dialogue. And we'll say, your daughter lives down the road. She'll say, Jessie and her family live up to the horse farm. Her husband, Carlos, may have some jobs for you. And then we'll ask about his brother's place. And he'll say, Eddie's dairy's at the end of the road. It's just him and his son since Barry was taken by that thing in the woods. They've apparently lost someone called Barry, and I have not interacted with them enough to know who that was. So just moving on. We do have the option to trade with Jack. He doesn't have much on offer at this time. I did notice once I completed a few quests for him, he had more items available for sale. And yeah, nothing spectacular even once you've done the quests. And at this point, I did do some testing. I saw that the nails were 4 cents each. And in my head, I thought that I could get them back from him for cheaper than I got turning them in. So basically, when we turned in 100 nails, we got $2.50. But to buy 100 nails is actually $4. So you can't buy back the nails you just gave him and continue turning them in. You'll be operating at a loss. Next, we'll go ahead and ask Jack, hey, do you have any work for us? And he'll say, yes, in fact, he does have a job for us. He says, well, we could use some 3-liter jars to preserve our produce. Can you bring me 20 large 3-liter jars? I'll give you some preserves in exchange. And so basically 20 3-liter jars is a hefty request, but we of course will say that we'll do it. If we ask him for advice, he'll say, check grocery stores, house kitchens, plenty of places to look, and it's pretty generic information. Unfortunately, 3-liter jars are not super common. It's actually pretty difficult to find them in bulk. Hopefully by the time you get here, you have some in reserve, but if you have to go out and look for them individually, my heart goes out to you because it's going to take quite some time. However, the mission is actually listed as find 10 3-liter glass jars, so I'm pretty sure you need 20. I'm not sure why it said 10. Looks like it's just a typo. Now, I spawned these with the debug menu. If you went out to try and find 20 3-liter glass jars, it's going to take you quite a long time because they're not super duper common, and even though they're more common now than they ever were before, it's going to take you a fair bit of looting houses. I would venture you'd probably need to clear minimally like 8 or 10 houses to find 3-liter glass jars in enough quantities to actually make the turn-in. The other main issue of this is that you can't actually store. So if you have 20 3-liter glass jars, that's 60 liters worth of space. And that's often more than the average survivor is going to carry in their inventory. So most likely you're going to need to double or triple up on backpacks and rucksacks and duffel bags in order to have that amount of storage. But once you have that and you're able to make it back to Jack, we will turn in the quest. We'll go back and he'll ask us how the search is going, and we'll say, hey, we got everything you want, and he will give us one single 3-liter glass jar of pickled veggies. This is a laughable response for the amount of work that you probably did hauling all of those out here and going to loot for those. Unless you have them on hand, this is not a very fun reward. A 3-liter jar of pickled veggies is nothing. It's essentially 12 portions of a 25-calorie food. So for all that work, and again, I think it would take you a fair bit of looting to find that many jars, and they give you about 600 calories in return. That's less meat than is on a lot of like raccoons. So it's pretty disappointing from a calorie perspective. Not thrilled about this quest and the reward, but whatever, this is about doing quests, so we'll just go back to him and we'll talk to him again because Jack has another quest for us. Once again, we'll ask him, can I do anything for you? And he'll tell us that he has another job for us. He says, well, we could use some seeds for the next planting season. Could you bring me 100 wheat seeds? I'll give you some fresh produce. Now, what's interesting about the 100 wheat seeds is that all the materials we need for that are already here on the farm, so we can knock this one out pretty easily. Before that, though, I did check his trade menu, and you'll see he now has the option of selling us vinegar, hard cheese, pickled fish, and pickled meat. This is interesting. It's nothing really exceptional, but at least he's opening up and allowing us to trade with him for food items now. And since you can deliver him nails and planks and whatever, that's an easy way to convert random construction materials into food. He doesn't have a lot on hand. I'm not sure if he actually updates his inventory every 3 days like other merchants, or if that's limited to NPCs that are specifically merchants. I'm not 100% on how NPCs work in that regard, but at least we can buy some amount of food from him that has a little bit more value than something like pickled veggies. Let's go address this wheat seed quest now. There is a large wheat field. For me, in the orientation of the location, it's actually on the eastern side. It's a large field full of wheat, and picking up the wheat is not considered stealing. So basically, you can just pick up as much as you want, and you can convert these to wheat seeds really easily. I'm not sure if wheat seeds are require certain survival or not. Some seeds are tied to survival last I checked. So if you're struggling to convert the wheat into seeds, it's probably because your survival is too low. But you can quickly convert them to seeds. It doesn't take very long, and they're free. It's free seeds, so we can just get 100 of those, take those back to Jack, and complete his second quest. Jack will ask us how our search is going, and we'll turn over the items to him. In exchange, he'll give us 25 tomatoes, 25 onions, and 25 cucumbers. What's really interesting, again, is that this is all fresh produce. So even though he's just given us 75 vegetables in exchange for 100 wheat seeds, we have an issue because now we have to convert that food into shelf-stable food. So let's look at these individually. The shelf life on the tomatoes is by far the worst at 3 days. So unless you're going to eat 25 tomatoes in the next 3 days, you will want to preserve them in some capacity. Next, after that, we have the cucumbers at 6 days, which again, unless you're going to eat them all, you need to convert them to stored food, to shelf-stable food. And then finally, we have the onions, which actually last several weeks, and I'm much less concerned about. However, again, they are vegetables, so the calorie count on these items is quite low. I don't know if I consider this a good reward. I think it fits the character, and I think it's an interesting thing to offer. Ultimately, though, it's a much better reward than 1 jar of pickled veggies, and I can't really complain. It's cool, and it makes sense that this would be something that they would give us as a go-to trade good or part of a bartering system. Makes sense that they would trade us these vegetables. And if we try to speak to Jack again, he will tell us that he does not have any other jobs for us at the moment. And if we try to trade with him again, it does not appear that anything new was added to his trade list. And I think that them trading with paper IOUs and produce is like really interesting as part of a barter system. It sort of makes sense that that is what we would revert to in the apocalypse. So I think that that's really interesting. I do like this location so far, and I like the characters. I'm excited to get to know them all better. I hope that all of their missions are not just fetch quests, because I find fetch quests pretty annoying, but based on what I've heard on Discord, they seem like they have some other stuff going on, and that it'll get more exciting as we go. Specifically, I asked people on Discord what the most exciting or interesting NPCs and factions are, and this was one that was referenced. So I'm hoping they've got a lot going on, but we will see as we continue. For now, I think that's going to do it. My recording has been terrible, and I'm at 36 minutes. I'm guessing edited down, it's probably more like 15 minutes. I've just had a lot of recording issues. So hopefully this episode was enjoyable. Hopefully you learned something, and I will be back with more of the Isherwood farm in the near future, and we'll be interacting with Claire next, I think, and we'll see what she has to say. So for now, that's going to do it. Thank you for watching. Remember to click that like button if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next episode.